And good evening, good afternoon, good morning to wherever you are watching from here in the Philippines or from all over the world. And welcome to my podcast, the RJ Ledesma podcast. In my podcast, I interview the country's pioneering business personalities and entrepreneurs to learn more about how they think about doing business. What are their success secrets? Can we replicate those success secrets in our own businesses? How have they innovated their businesses during the pandemic times? And more importantly, what opportunities do they see emerging in the new normal? Is there a business personality or entrepreneur that you would like me to interview here on the podcast? Please let me know. I would love to learn from them. Just drop me a message. Right now, we are also live on Kumu and YouTube. And before we begin the podcast, a little talk from my sponsor. Are you tired of bank transfer fees and low interest rates? Then if you are, say hello to our good friends from GoTime Bank. GoTime Bank offers interest rates 50x higher than traditional banks and offers 3 free bank transfers to other banks per week. With GoTime Bank, you can make quick and easy transfers to other banks, plus enjoy higher interest rates of 3% per year on your savings. No minimum amount, no deposit caps, and no need to complete tasks or missions. Plus, as a Gokongwei Group Bank, you can trust GoTime Bank to keep your money safe and secure. Download the GoTime Bank app today and experience the next level of banking. Or you can also visit their website, www.gotime, that's gotyme.com.ph for more details. Now, tonight, I have a very special set of guests. Over the past 3 years, I've had a chance to host both live and virtually the Shell Livewire event. Shell Livewire is actually the flagship enterprise development program of Shell, whose vision is to strengthen local economies by promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and meaningful employment. And tonight we're very happy to have both people who are part of the Shell organization, who have been at the forefront of the Shell Livewire program. We want to share with you a bit more, especially if you are an entrepreneur. How can you participate in the Shell Livewire program, and how can they help you grow your own startup business? So tonight we have, first of all, our guest from Shell. He is the Vice President of Corporate Relations of the Pilipinas Shell Petroleum Corporation, Serge Bernal, who has been an advocate for sustainable development and the transition towards cleaner and more efficient energy sources. Joining Serge is also formerly an engineer in the semiconductor industry, to now with more than 2 decades of expertise in research and development. We have Dr. Jerome Palaganas, who is the co-founder and CEO of Nanotronics. He was a guest formerly on the show, and he was one of the winners of Shell Livewire. His company Nanotronics is at the forefront of producing sustainable nanotechnology materials from highly renewable indigenous plants. And rounding out our guest here this evening, when we were in college, we actually worked on the same college newspaper, The La Salle. He was my editor in chief, and now I'm so happy to see he is in a startup that is passionate in aiding our farmer folk and now even our fisher folk. He is Henry Sison, who designed and built Agro Digital PH. With his farming experience and success in running a profitable integrated organic farm, Agro Digital PH works towards its goal of allowing farmers to reach out directly to their markets, efficiently manage their production, and consolidate produce for themselves. Please welcome on my show, of course, we have here right now Serge Bernal, Henry Sison, and Dr. Jerome Palaganas. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here today on the show. Really appreciate your presence here right now.
Good
So,
evening,
so
RJ.
Good
nice to see all
evening.
of you guys. And I find that I
Hi.
actually found out that Henry here right now is joining us all the way from Dumaguete, where he's expanding his services to fisherfolk. Henry, great job over there. Doc Jerome, where are you
Thanks.
coming up? Where are you coming in from?
I'm from Laguna, Binyan.
Laguna.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. Good evening, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So let's get the ball rolling. I want to go back to Serge. Serge, I know the Shell Livewire has been doing this program not just in the Philippines but all over the world. But can you give us a better perspective? What is Shell Livewire all about, and why is it crucial here in the Philippines? Why did Shell Philippines take on the job of bringing Shell Livewire over here?
Thanks, RJ. I think you captured it very, very well in your opening statement, right? I mean, you mentioned that this is how we actually help the country with our commitment to nation building. So we are here to really support Filipino startups to grow their business through entrepreneurship training, mentoring, and coaching from Shell Livewire's business experts, both local and abroad. So capital funding is also supported and the link to businesses in our value chain. Now, why is this important? It's because I think in one of the sessions that we had earlier this year, it was really explained that MSMEs comprise of about, I think they employ 90% of the workforce.
That's
So
right.
it's really part of our commitment to help MSMEs propagate so that we help the economy, further. Shell Livewire is a flagship program that's done not only in the Philippines but all over the world. But for the Philippines, we've just launched this back in 2020. But through since 2020, we've had already 400 local startups who've joined,
Wow.
and a lot of those are already with our value chain.
Wow. So let's get into it a bit more when you talk about the value chain of Shell. But first of all, you actually launched. If you think about it, you launched Shell Livewire in the midst of the pandemic. Kasi 2020 and they launched ninyo, and I guess you decided to pursue it. What made Shell think that it was a good idea to do this in the midst of the pandemic?
Well, to be honest, we've always had the program even before Shell Livewire was launched. Yeah, it was only formalized in 2020 just to be able to get into the mainstream flagship program of Shell. But we've been here for 109 years, celebrating our 110th by 2024. And we've had the foundation, our Pilipinas Shell Foundation, for 40 years already. So together with our foundation and with all of our 24 terminals all over the country, we've always set up a program that will help the communities around the communities where we work in. So it's not new to us. It just became bigger because now we have more funding from from Shell Global, and also we've opened up a lot of more opportunities when you talk about trying to get our participants or our entrepreneurs into our value chain. So if ever there is a difference from what we've been doing before to what is happening now, it's probably more into getting them more involved in our value chain. Now, to your question about, sorry if it's a bit long-winded.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah, perfect. No
Your
problem.
question about why is it good to launch it during the pandemic? I think it makes perfect sense because that industry almost collapsed, right? The economy
Mhm.
almost collapsed, and as I mentioned, a lot of these small budding entrepreneurs still wanted to make sure that, how do you help them really pick themselves up in, during the pandemic. So maybe just for example, just an example, we have one that's called CBAP. This is a cooperative in Batangas who creates safety uniforms for our plant. So the pivot was, since we were already in the pandemic, how else can we help CBAP? And as it turns out, masks were really a necessity then and even up to now. So what the cooperative did was that in, other than creating or making safety shirts or safety uniforms, they also went into creating masks. And now these masks are now sold and distributed in more than 100 stations that we have across the country. So if you see that, it's we use our network and we use our connections and we use where the experts that we have to help the MSMEs.
Got that. Now, talking about helping the MSMEs, you've been talking about the value chain. Both Henry and Dr. Jerome have been beneficiaries of that one. I just want, I hope you don't mind, Dr. Jerome and Henry. I want to just get us a bit more into the Shell Live Wire because many of the entrepreneurs here can benefit. There may be actually listening here right now going, wow, you were talking about actually funding the project. And for many of them, that's a very important thing because many of these entrepreneurs have been bootstrapping, meaning the money's been coming out. They've been shelling out of their own pocket, hopefully. If they join Shell Livewire, can you help us better understand what is the actual cash component to maybe it might be a motivation for many of them to join? What do they actually get if they become part of it? If they just join, do they already get some sort of financial subsidy, or do they have to win to be able to get part of the financial help from Shell?
So so it starts off with, of course, the support, right? As you register, there's already a financial support for your startup, and there's also technical support because we run seminars that are facilitated by both local and experts from our global network. It gets bigger, of course, when you win. And when you win, the prize money is about ₱500,000. So that really gets boosts
Wow.
your company or your startup to maybe even expand faster. Yeah.
And this is equity free. I mean, you just give 500,000 pesos. Shell doesn't take any equity in the company.
No, we don't.
Okay, fantastic. And then
But
one more
I think
question about.
what's
Please go
sorry.
ahead. Please go ahead, Serge. Please go
But
ahead.
I think what's also more important there is how will the MSME or the startup be able to get integrated in our value chain?
Yes.
Huh?
And I want to ask, so
Um,
what does it exactly mean that, the startup that you're looking for gets integrated into the Shell value chain? So that means that, at once you're able to make sure that they have a client. You are the B2B client. Is that correct?
yes, so that's part of the design because that already ensures that the winner has an automatic customer, right? And with our breadth and our history in this country, we need to make sure that our partners survive with us through the next 100 years. So when you talk about our value chain, it's really in energy, renewable energy, environment, and sustainability, and everything that has to do with local prosperity. Yeah,
And
does that
um,
answer? Sorry.
yeah, yeah, and sorry, and I'm gonna start. Before I pass on the mic, Serge, when I look at later on, when you hear about companies like Henry's, AgroDigital, and Nanotronics, they're very highly tech oriented. But earlier on, you were saying, the other company was actually they were manufacturing actually clothes, and then they went to masks. So that is not so highly technical. What
That's
exactly are
true.
the type of entrepreneurs are you looking for to participate in Shell Livewire?
Well, it's actually anything. We have because our business spans a lot. It spans across several industries. So we have retailing, which is the example that I gave earlier. In that way, if your product or if something that you do makes sense in our retailing business, then you get integrated there. If it's something that has to do with our manufacturing, or sorry, not manufacturing, but some distribution, we already closed on our or refinery, sorry, in our distribution model, then you get integrated there as well. Or in distributing, for example, our products. If there's a program there that digitizes that, I think next pays into that, right? So it's really, if maybe the best way to put it is that um, for as long as you touch lives, just like how our products do, then there is always a way to integrate your products, your business into our value chain.
And what have been the businesses aside from nanotronics and agro digital that have been successfully integrated? You talked about one of them earlier on, which is the masks. Are there any that you're particularly fond of that you liked when they were able to become part of the Shell value chain? And you've seen how their businesses have scaled greatly because of their participation in the value chain.
Okay, so I can give you two examples. One is Suds Sustainable Pods.
I remember
So
them.
they,
I remember them. From the last Shell Live Wire. Yes.
there you go. So this is a water soluble pods hand wash. So right now they supply all our hand washes in all of our stations, in all of our assets, including our head office here in the finance center. So that's one. The other is Bambuhay. So we've
Bambuhay.
integrated Bambuhay. It's they create sustainable toothbrushes that with seeds that are embedded in the stem, so or in the handle. So as soon as you're finished with the using your toothbrush, or if you've done it, maybe after 3 months, right? It's the normal time. You break the stem in half, and there are seeds inside. And then you plant. Sorry, actually, you don't even need to break it. You plant the toothbrush in a pot, and it grows into a tree. So, and that's also how we help the environment. And
Fantastic.
there
Can it
are
help you? Can it
others
also help you grow
like
new
our
teeth?
friends here, yeah, agro digital, and of course nanotronics.
No, that's right. Does it help? It can help you. Bamboo can not help you grow new teeth as well. No, sayang lang. That would be fantastic. But okay lang yan. Okay lang yan.
Yeah.
Poorly timed joke. But thanks again so much, Serge. Now
All
I want
right.
to go right up to our two of our participants there, kay Dr. Jerome, who's been on the show before, and to Henry. I want to start off muna with Dr. Jerome. Dr. Jerome, I know that you were actually the recipient. You were an awardee, right? You were a Shell Live Wire awardee for what year again?
2020, the inaugural.
You the inaugural, so kasama tayo sa inaugural. I remember that right now.
Mhm.
So you got 500,000 pesos as a benefit of winning the competition.
Mhm.
And right now, what is your contribution inside that Shell ecosystem or Shell value chain?
Okay, so my contribution is that because of the opportunity given to me, so we develop actually our sustainable biomaterials for packaging. And of course, there are like many clients or alumni of Shalibar. So we have like part of our clientele to there today. It's some of the alumni of Shalibar. So it really gave us a lot of opportunities, by the way, to expand.
Great, fantastic news. So, I was reading the description of your product, and it's a well. Before that, let me go to Henry. And for you, Henry, you guys also won as well, right? You also won Shell Live Wire. What year
That's
again?
right. The following year, 2021.
So
Yeah.
I'm talking to two winners. I'm talking to two 500,000 winners of Shell. And in your
Yeah.
case, how were you integrated into the Shell ecosystem?
So primarily we focused on getting produce actually from our farming community. So definitely for farmers and fishers, they don't usually have enough capital to wait for the usual terms. So really, it went into revolving capital to sustain our communities. It's really more for that. But we do have plans of integrating ourselves in the Shell ecosystem, primarily their communities actually. So there are a couple of communities in Batangas, and among them would be one of those who actually they manage a landfill. No, and it's particularly interesting because apart from agro digital, we're also looking at solutions for waste recovery.
Fantastic. So I'm so glad that it's become sort of like a springboard for you guys to actually expand the businesses. And just like any entrepreneur, your network is your net worth. So the network here was actually not just the Shell ecosystem, but it's also uh, the alumni who came to the Shell Live Wire, because you got people like NextPay, you have people like All Care and Sprout Solutions, all these different startups who help build the local tech startup ecosystem solving issues. Now, having said that one, I want to go on. I want to ask you right now another question, and I'm going to go back to Dr. Jerome. It's a bit difficult to explain your product to people. So, if we can, no, can we sort of give the like I said, when my dad was still alive, he was a 78-year-old guy, and I had to explain these concepts to him, what the startup business was. How can we, I guess, how can we make it more easy to understand for somebody much more mature than us, or who don't have an understanding? What does nanotronics do?
Okay, so in nanotronics, what we do, it's actually we produce key materials. So this would be an ingredient right now of like several industries for that matter. So for instance, in packaging, we are the key materials today for coming up with sustainable packaging materials. When I say sustainable, this is now a replacement for plastics or our fossil-based plastics. So we have developed in the past several months already since last year, like three or four of our biomaterials where in fact we have launched already those, and of course we're trying to market it such that of course we expand and will contribute in terms of minimizing or actually trying to come up with the reduction of plastic waste, which we know for a fact that this is a problem. And also, we have with the same technology or the nanotechnology products, we are able actually to um, come up with another application. So one of the applications, it's actually anti-corrosion coating. So if you add our product, of course, it created another application, not just in the packaging industry, but now it goes into like power industries, or it could be
Mhm.
used by another industry. And the third that we actually have an application right now with the same nanomaterial, it becomes part and component of 3D bioprinting. So imagine this goes into medical, and that 3D bioprinting, it can now produce scaffold, which is actually the one that holds cell. So it is good for tissue engineering or actually try to grow artificial skin. So the artificial skin by our client would be used later on for testing. So they don't need animals anymore to do like cosmetic testing.
Got that. Dr. I have a question, because you have a strong research background, basically. You have a science background and an engineering background. And you chose to go into, well, I would consider this becoming an engineering field. Usually, the concern that we have with people who have a technical background is that they're so good with the technology. But sometimes it's technology, you create a product, but it's a product looking for a solution rather
Mm.
than a solution. Rather than your product is the solution, you have a solution, but it's still looking for your product, but it's still looking for a solution to solve. How did you first approach this one? Were you like that when you were starting off? You were stumbling towards creating really great products, but you weren't too sure if they were solving anything or they were specific for anything at the start. Because I think that's often the experience of many people, such as in your background.
Yes, that's true, RJ. It's actually one of the challenges of course, those who are highly technical or actually more into technology. However, in my case, as I've shared before, I have like both backgrounds. So, though I am into engineering and technology as well, I have the other background into business and management. So I've done it on my early years. Technically, my technology or engineering background, which I got a PhD, it's more recent as compared to my business background.
I
So,
see. I see.
so that balances. So for me, I look at the other way around. So if clients are coming to me, and then of course, I look at what are their problems, or if there are like commonalities right now. So for instance, before I didn't take a look really of having the biomaterials, but since there are already like three clients knocking on our door, and of course I said, why is it that I'm not doing this? So I focus and, of course, try to concentrate, have our product, of course, to come up with the biomaterials now, since we have already developed this. And there is like a good opportunity, not just serving the three clients, but of course the market, which is the FMCG market. And we know for a fact that packaging, it's one of the major contributors in terms of like waste after, we use any product for that matter.
I get that. So when you were starting off doing, when you were starting off doing nanotronics, it's great to hear that you had both a science and engineering and a business background. Um, Doing research like this one requires a lot of, funding, and we talked about bootstrapping earlier on. How exactly were you able to start off this business, which for me, because it's technical and requires a lot of research and maybe perhaps equipment, how did you get started without, given the capital that you had?
Mhm. That's a very good question, RJ. So, initially we started as a trading, but for that matter, that trading, there's like certain limitation because the product and technology that you sell is naturally not your own. However, we got this opportunity wherein we can do R&D in terms of like this nanotechnology materials. And when we got that opportunity, of course we took it. So we went to the US, did our stuff, did our R&D work on like several projects, and of course published. Went back here in the Philippines. That was in 2017, and primarily that's the problem. So we, with the technology, with the knowledge right now, so how do you convert it so that we can commercialize a product or a technology that would benefit the Philippines? So what we did, we look at like different funding sources. Fortunate enough, there was actually one coming from the Department of Science and Technology.
Hmm.
So what we did is actually we applied for a grant, and we were fortunate to be part of the first 15 grantees of the startup grant coming from DOST. So way back then, there was no such thing as startup grant, and because of the success of the program, given to us as the first batch, we were actually 15 tech startups. Now it has been like a regular basis from the Department of Science and Technology. So it's an annual already that they're giving up the startup grant. So with the startup grant that we receive, we started our pilot facility in Laguna. Uh, Again, and with luck going to our side, even though we're still starting our pilot facility, we got already a client who purchased to us our product even before we have our pilot facility. So from there,
Wow.
yeah, it's really a lot of like series of fortunate events happening.
Great. But what I see from you, it's really a lot of discarte. It's not just the technology. You have to go out and hustle and really, look for the money, look for the funding, look for the grants, di ba?
Yes, that's true. So you really have to do the hustle and then think outside of the box.
Really great story, Dr. Jerome. Thanks so much for telling us the nanotronic story. I'm gonna move on now to Henry. And this is the interesting thing also about Henry. I know Henry, medyo kilala ko si Henry for many years. I'm glad to see that we still look like how we look like in college, no, Henry. That's just wishful
Thank
thinking
you.
for us. But Henry's got a computer science background, and I know that you worked for a consulting firm, Henry, for many, many years. That was your background, right? And there are
That's
other
right. Yep.
entrepreneurs also who are here right now saying, I am in a professional career, but they want to jump into entrepreneurship. What was that for you? I mean, you had established your name in your chosen career, yet you gave it up to go to entrepreneurship, which for many people is uncertain. What was that? I guess walk me through the time. What were the motivations? What led you to that jump?
All right. Yeah. So it's a very interesting story because it's just a matter of one of those odd days. So I was actually in corporate for almost 2.5 decades. On my sometime in 2008. So maybe I was about 36 years old. I was spending a usual weekend wherein I take photographs as well as play the PlayStation. And then it just occurred to me I was going to be 40, and well, I asked myself, what significant thing I have done to help society, and it was a very quick midlife crisis, and the answer there was basically I'll go into agriculture, not knowing that it was a very complex field relative to IT. Yeah, so So we built an organic farm. So we actually started from orchids, and then about 2 3 years after, went into organic farming in around 2011, focusing on layers. So that's eggs and then native pigs, as well as free range chickens, which is something that we've already, well, we're still continuing up to today. Most of our clients are in Metro Manila. Now, as a realization of this own experience, we had problems monetizing goods, especially when you work with distributors or with middlemen. We're not saying that everyone is evil, but the odds are actually stacked against farmers and fishers. We're just lucky that I was actually a professional and could manage my own. But for the most part, these communities of farmers and fishers are usually disenfranchised. So we asked ourselves, what do large companies or large companies in agriculture have that smallholders do not have? And that's basically one, capital, and two, most of the large companies control the entire value chain. So from the time that our inputs all the way to those things that are sold. So we said, okay, how do we get capital? So in this case, we try to cluster smallholder farmers so we can consolidate the capital. And we approached this differently by sewing together a series of cooperatives and associations to build its own value chain. And
So
that's where, I think.
this was all mano mano to start. I mean, this is no tech. Well, I'm asking. There was no technology. It's just that there was a problem you just saw, which is that
It's a problem. Actually, we led with a technology solution.
I see.
We led with the technology solution. So in 2019, we already had the solution, but we had problems with adoption because we're tech guys. How do you get the farmer or the fisher try digital, right? And that's where we've actually focused for the past 3 years. We are very grassroots. We believe that we need to go manual first, then we teach them why they need to go digital. Yeah, so that has been our forte. It's really building communities. If there are livelihood programs or interventions that are needed, we work with the local government units. We work with the line agencies to give them that livelihood and then integrate them into our value chain.
Okay, I want to go back a bit in your story because I think many people can relate to that. I mean, that's right. When you're about to hit your 40s, I'm sorry, si Sir Serge wala pang 40 yan eh. But then when you hit your around your 40s, you do get that life. I went through the same sort of midlife crisis, no. When you put up those orchids and you started your I mean, you were a total amateur. You had no nothing. How did you transition from, let's say, full-time consultant to becoming full-time entrepreneur? Did you just do a side hustle for the orchids and the organic farm, or did you just jump ship altogether and get into
Oh, it was a long and winding road, RJ. You needed an income, a source of income. So obviously, you need to focus on what the deliverables are required of you during the time. Having said that, weekends, instead of just playing the PlayStation or going on a photo trip, we basically did research. So I did research in terms of culture of orchids for one. So very unlikely na bakit off shadow. But anyway, it's orchids, and then going into food production using the organic way. I'm not exactly a fan of those who market things and then they build a startup because they know how to talk. And for some, so I think I do have the background in terms of or the experience to say, well, I did agriculture and that's almost 12 years or sorts. No, even if as a professional I was in IT. For me, it's important that you do understand what business you're going into, and you cannot guess it, you cannot wing it. At some point in time, you will stumble and make bad decisions. For us, it's been a journey of constant refinement, especially when we want to engage our farmer and fishing communities. For instance, local language is very important in communicating with these farmers and fishers. So it's something that we have actually gained across the years, and we refine that. And then armed with that type of information, then somehow it's easier to basically get people onboarded.
Got that. I want to just ask, how exactly do you describe agro digital? Is it, did you help develop an? It's not exactly an app really. It's a whole solution. So what was the basic? I can understand so we can get into, so people can understand also the thinking of the entrepreneur. What was the problem that you initially came to solve, and what was
Okay.
the first
Yeah.
thing that you created to solve that issue? And then I guess how did it iterate from there? No.
Okay. Yeah. So now we have a different tagline. So we're actually there to produce affordable food. In a nutshell, that's what we're trying to do. Why? Because of the imperfections of the food value chain, um, usually our producers are getting a lot less money for their efforts. Where consumers, they have to pay a lot. Even here in Negros, I was quite surprised that ampalaya is 120 pesos, right? It's amazing. Like, if let's say if you are just a daily wage earner and you know that the daily wage is actually a lot less than Metro Manila, how can you actually afford buying ampalaya and vegetables? And it's important that people actually get good nutrition. And good nutrition cannot be has a price, diba? And if it's expensive, then obviously forget about nutrition. No? And it's complex, and it's actually a very complex problem. And the thing was, a lot of our contemporaries during that time, around 2017, 2018, were really focusing on e-commerce, right? Uh, Unfortunately, for food produce, hindi siya ganun ka straightforward yung yung e-commerce for food. Because one, it's perishable. Two, you're not talking about a manufacturing outfit, no? Like in consumer goods, wherein if they say, oh, it's like 20 tons of this kind of product, it will be there. You're talking about 9.5 million farmers and fishers, each one with its own, well, each one whom they have their own experience, each way of doing businesses. No, and we needed to basically factor that in when we came up with the solution, and we said we cannot just rely on a marketplace. We have to go deeper, and that's the reason why we kind of built the digital platform that actually supports production management, forecasting,
I see. I
um,
see.
diba? And the entire shebang until consolidation. We have a platform for consolidation and even logistics. It was a whole solution that
Parang nag-backward integrate ka. Parang nag-backward integrate the whole
exactly. We had to actually sew things all together. Kasi parang if we left it to a marketplace, then there was no differentiator for us. We're just perpetuating the old system. If we were going to come up with our own way of doing business, we had to actually build our own infrastructure.
Got that, got that. And then the last thing I want to talk about, which is very interesting, and it's also coming out through the talk of Dr. Jerome, no, was that you have a, I mean, there is a sort of, it's an advocacy to it all. Because I often say, especially for the Gen Zs and the millennials, when they, unlike when we were growing up, probably Dr. Jerome, Henry, and Serge, we would just buy products because they were great products. But nowadays, people want to make sure that when they buy something, it's meaningful and relevant in their own little way, and that if I buy it in my own little way, it changes the world or improves the world. Henry, I mean, when I look at what you guys are doing right now, it's sort of like I think of it na parang you have a strong why behind it, like what Simon Sinek says, right? How did you? I mean, it's not common, it's not common to say I'm going to do this product because there's an advocacy behind it. How do you marry, I guess, that idea of social entrepreneurship and advocacy with the idea that hey, I'm still making a good living? I guess many people are thinking of that as well, especially at our age. If you do a social enterprise together with, is it also a profitable industry at the same time as I do social enterprise?
Oh, yes, definitely. When we come up with solutions and business models, we need to float everyone's boats. Um, Kasi the people in the industry, they're very self-centered, I would say. They don't exactly care whether, they mow down people along the way. Well, just to be frank, that's how agriculture is. It's to each man to himself. We said we wanted to make a difference when we said we wanted to have agro-digital as a digital platform to teach
I think Henry,
with hello.
go ahead.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that farmers and fishers have equal say in the way that they, let's say, price their goods, or they can decide where they want to actually sell their goods and which customers to serve. It's really more of trying to equalize the system such that they have their own voice.
Got that. Now, I want to go back a bit more to Doc Jerome lang at the same time, and I guess both Henry and Doc Jerome. And it's the idea also of the perception of doing a business like this one, that failure is almost inherent because as you can see, like when I'm talking to Henry, I mean, the first model was not, I mean, akala mo technology problema, it's adoption. So something adaming, parang failure is built in. And Doc Jerome, I don't know also in nanotronics, the same way where you're in your field. Um, how are you supposed to perceive failure, especially when you have sort of engineering and science background? Do you perceive it just a series of failed experiments leading towards a better solution? How are entrepreneurs supposed to take failure, especially in these fields? I want to know your thoughts.
Uh, f- in our case, so for me, for instance, so for failure, just allow it. Long time ago, just to share, I did my very first venture, but it failed. Why? It is because I have not thoroughly, as what Henry said, research on the market. I just go on the bandwagon since this is like the
Mm,
fashion right now, and of course, I jump into it without having really the thoughts. And going back to nanotronics, we didn't started with nanotechnology. If you would look at our history, we started as a trading company, but way back then, still the focus is into innovation. We're trying to bring in advanced materials for semiconductor and electronics. We were successful for like a very short period of time, but it's not really sustainable. So we have to really think of what could really be like a very innovative product that there will be like, we will be the first in the market. If not, we create another market, and then having that thought, then we really try to dig deep and see what could be that technology. And fortunate enough, I was actually introduced into material science, and then that material science became polymer science, and the polymer science introduced the idea about nanotechnology. Now, once we have the nanotechnology, I look at, oh, we have so many like materials or like, natural resources in the Philippines. Why not we use those instead of using the ones, so that we will not be importing, but we will be using indigenous plants as which we have here in the Philippines, and then try to maximize. And then later on, we saw like different opportunities. So coming just from one product, there are like several derivative products which I've already discussed and shared
mm,
early on, and it gave us a lot of opportunities right now. So just try to hear the problems coming from the different clients, or when we do like a exhibition, there are so many people trying to give us like an idea. If there's like commonality, then therefore we go for it, and then see if there's like a bigger market out of that. And true enough, that will be like, a big market. So just try to hear the voice of your customer, and I'm pretty sure that you will be like more successful in terms of like launching the product or doing the iteration than just hearing yourself, or just having, the concept, the product, the technology just built within, and it's not aligned to the market.
exactly. So that's perfect. I mean, again, it's a product market fit and keeping your ear to the ground and listening to the customer. What I actually really appreciated is the idea that you were saying that when you came up with the product, it was the idea that you combine both the entrepreneurial mindset, that lens of opportunity of seeing things, at the same time, sort of your business background. Parang, okay, there's an opportunity here to develop this one, and scientifically, there's something else available here. Let me marry that both and find that opportunity. And I guess that's what's great about sometimes entrepreneurs, you draw from your own background and see what products you can create. And Henry, for you, I mean, failure has been actually a part of the DNA, I guess, of Agro Digital, because
Ah, yes.
you've had several
Yeah.
versions. In fact, your tagline has changed several times
Exactly.
until
That's
last
right.
year.
Yeah. Yes.
So share
Yeah.
with Jerome
It's
your thoughts.
yeah. It's really a matter of changing with the times, adapting. Swinging with the punches. All. Um, it's never easy to accept failure, but the thing is, you need to change. If you want to succeed in life, then you should adapt. I mean, it's really survival of the fittest.
Got that, got that. And I want to go back to Serge here right now. Serge, the thing that I noticed about both of them, which is very interesting, is that both of their products seem to have an advocacy towards nation building. I mean, kay Henry, you can it's I can see it very very clearly na he's helping the fisher folk and the farmers grow their businesses. Kay Doc Jerome, it's all about how can we take indigenous material and replace them in technology so that we don't have to source abroad. Is this something that was sort of intentional for Shell Livewire to get these type of brands which have some sort of, I guess I would call it, nation building component to become part of Shell Livewire?
Well, RJ, first of all, I'm really amazed and inspired by people like Dr. Jerome and Henry. I mean, this is, as you keep on saying earlier, failure is inherent in what they do, and they're still doing it because of the passion that they have. Now, to answer your question, it's probably more of our concept of nation building is really on how can we impact the community where we operate. So, and having participants as our esteemed speakers here is more of an accident than anything else, but it's something that we would really like to explore going further, because it's really bordering on the things that are indigenous and also innovative, which is essentially what also Shell stands for.
I got that really, but it's what a nice what a fantastic coincidence, or very serendipitous that these are the products which have been coming out. And I just want to ask Serge, I mean, you've had the benefit of seeing not just the successful products like what Henry's done in 2022 or Doc Jerome, but across the different countries which have this program, and you've seen all the applicants to the program as well. Have you seen certain common denominators across any of the startups who have joined that you think can help other entrepreneurs? I mean, what have you seen that made them successful, or startups with potential? What would you like to share that you've seen?
I think if there's anything common with all of our entrepreneurs, it's really their penchant for solving problems. Yeah. Whether it's something that's as urgent as what you need during the pandemic, or just something that, just like what Henry is saying, how do you help? How do you help the farmers without being stuck in the same system? So it's something that's as again, it's very inspiring, because it's born most, I think it's born out of necessity, which is the mother of invention. But I think more importantly, it's also, what's really important is the ability to be able to help communities. That's what's really important. So the way we look at it, and when we talk about supporting the communities, it's really about creating jobs, and livelihood for the underprivileged sectors in the communities. I think earlier it was mentioned that Henry was saying that they are supporting an IP community, which is the same for, I think, most of our participants in this program. So that alone creates a huge impact. In the last 3 years that we've run Livewire, I believe in our counting, and the way we count it is, we've already generated, I think, at least for those participants that joined this program, we've already created, or at least created 500 jobs, which is huge if you think about it.
Really great. And I just want to flash here on how can you participate here, Serge? I know that the Shell Live Wire for this year is finished. But I'm sorry, we're 2023 now. I just remember I hosted last year Shell Live Wire, so we've got a new set of winners this year. Tell us a bit more for the people who want to join Shell Live Wire this year. How can they participate? And as we say that one, we're going to flash here right now on the screen the application, the website that they can visit at the same time. That's shell.com.ph/livewire. Julia, if you can flash it on the screen here right now. Serge, can you tell us how people can participate in what are the qualifications that a startup needs to be a part of this?
Well, registration never ends. It's a full year program, so you don't actually miss a registration date. Maybe what you only miss is the awards program for this year, but you can always register for the following year. So it's a full year program, as you mentioned. I think the website is up there. I can see it. Just go to the website, click on this link, and you'll find the application form there.
And this is open to anybody who has a startup concept, or does it have to be running, or can they go there with just the idea and then they come in and Shell will help them flesh it out?
Well, it would,
what exactly do they go through in the program if they get to join?
because the, it has to have some proof of concept, which means it has to be running. Yeah, because an idea in itself, it's going to be very difficult, as Doc Jerome mentioned, and I think, and this is very common to a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of inventors. You'd probably fail 10 times before you get, before you get a working model. And if you just come to us with just an idea, then I think probably it's bound to fail. But we'd rather that you have a working model so that it's easier to really integrate easily to the value chain.
Got that. Thanks
RJ,
so
I
much.
just wanted to mention that we did
Good.
not make the first tier.
Wow.
So we applied in Livewire on the first tier. We didn't make it. But we did
But
make it
here
on
we
the
are right
second.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So
the
I
best
guess
Cinderella
that
story over here, no?
exactly. So I guess sometimes you just have to be persistent.
Yeah.
There
You
you
are the
go.
Pia
That's what
Wurzbach
that's what
of
makes
you're the Pia
you
Wurzbach
really
of
good.
Shell Livewire. No. So, go, Serge. Please go ahead, Serge. You were saying.
Yeah, that's why we have people like Dr. Jerome and Henry, because they're really, they're really persistent. They have the brains for it, and also the heart, right, the passion to do the things that they do, and they don't stop trying. That's what this is why they're there, and I'm an employee.
But yes, I just wanted to say, as I was listening to them, there's things I have to realize. Diba? I mean, Doc Jerome and Henry are both very smart individuals. But I mean, intelligence alone isn't the main marker for succeeding entrepreneurship. As you can see, there was also the hustle because Jack Jerome. If you think about it, yung Nanotronics, it was a trading company, di ba? So parang just to create the cash flow, and they started over there. So the
Yes.
hustle was over there, and aside from that one, another key thing that I think that really came out from them, aside from the hustle, is really there's a certain advocacy to it as well. Parang, especially during the pandemic, I often tell people if you didn't have that why behind it, patay ka na because there's no stronger drive, eh, diba? There has to be some sort of drive. I'm not just doing it for myself or for the money. I'm doing it for something better. And I think that that's what makes many of us actually survive and thrive. And having said that, I'm going to start wrapping up this discussion. But I want to go back again to Doc Jerome and to Henry. And you know what? You guys have had are quite a journey getting here entrepreneurially. You're still going through it. But if you were to sort of distill the best pieces of management advice, maybe 2 to 3 pieces of management advice to upcoming entrepreneurs as well, who are trying to grow their businesses, who are trying to get capital, who are trying to get into Shell Livewire, what would be your key pieces of advice so that they can hack what you guys did to get to your level right now? Let's start with Dr. Jerome.
Uh, for me, my piece of advice is that number one, be hungry and then be foolish. So don't assume that despite that you have the education or the background, you know everything. So you have to make it in a point that you want to know everything, and of course there's still a room for improvement. So there's always room for improvement and continuous improvement and growth. And then the next one, it's more of like thinking differently. So why think differently? Because if everybody is like going on the same fad, and then there will be like a lot of players already in the industry, and then how would you manage yourself in terms of trying to have differentiation at the same time, how to move forward. But if you think differently, you can create a whole new market, and of course try to build that market. And as what I have experienced, this new market right now creates a lot more opportunities for me than trying to go to like a mature or existing market as well. So that will be like my piece of advice for those who would like to go the entrepreneurial journey.
Got that. It's stay hungry and foolish and think differently. Really great pieces of advice. Thanks so much, Dr. Jerome Palaganas, the 2020, tama di ba, 2020 winner of the Shell Livewire. And
Yes.
Henry, what is your piece of advice or pieces of
When you
advice?
come up with yeah. So when you come up with something, make sure somebody's willing to pay for it. At the end of the day, this is not a hobby, di ba? Um, Kasi if you're okay not earning money, then you probably have to be an NGO. Sorry, or it's going to be a charity case. It is not bad to earn money actually. And the thing is, without money, then you won't be able to actually help people. So the thing is, when you come up with a business model, make sure somebody's gonna pay for it. Um, if it's cute, it's nice, it's trend. Yeah, that's gonna fade in a couple of months, couple of years. At the end of the day, longevity is determined by profitable companies. So that's one. Second, don't afraid to change gears. If the market or if your customers are asking you to do something differently, then keep an open mind. Um, and and swing with the punches. No? It's not bad if in midstream you change your tack. You're just being practical, and the best enterprises that survive the long run are those who actually change. Yeah? They're the ones who do not get disrupted, and we have a lot of examples of companies that get disrupted because they're just they're just tenacious in holding on to the old ways. And finally, something that I cannot overemphasize, you need to be tenacious in your beliefs. If you feel that what you're fighting for is really correct and right well, it's righteous, go ahead and do that. Don't let failure, get the better of you. Failure is transient. At the end of the day, when you re-strategize, put your brain power behind the stuff that you will try to do differently, I'm pretty sure that you will succeed.
Got that. And I really appreciate the idea of tenacity now. It's become. I just want to share that there's really great for me. My dad passed away a couple of months ago, and when they did, and I saw, it was only when I got to see in hindsight what he was able to create as a businessman. I didn't realize how tenacious he was because it didn't seem like he was being tenacious because he was like, you know, his regular stuff, but you could see, it is part of the DNA. And I'd like to think that that's one of the most key things for our entrepreneurs, aside from everything you talked about and acceptance of failure, is that entrepreneurs really have to be tenacious. Serge, I'm giving you the pleasure of rounding out this discussion. I'm sure from your own corporate background, there are certain things also that you can share with people running companies and want becoming more efficient to scale it. What have you learned from both Shell Livewire and from Shell that you can share with our entrepreneurs listening to us here right now?
I think if there's anything that's common between all of us in this forum is that Henry succinctly said it, right? The word is tenacious. Really being focused on what you want to do, how you want to succeed. I mean, for a employee like me, how do you go all the way up in the organization, and this really rides on how you want to provide for your family. Yeah. Henry also mentioned that it's not bad to profit from it for as long as you don't step on people's toes or you don't do it illegally. So if there's anything that's really common is how do you earn a proper living with what you believe in, and how do you stay on track?
Got that, got that. And at least if you're able to reconcile it within you, I mean, you can do a great job, whether you're working for somebody or you're working for yourself. And I think that's a really great piece of advice. Again, thanks so much, Serge Bernal of Shell Philippines, and of course, Shell Livewire. Julio, can you flash on screen one more time for those who want to participate in Shell Livewire and be one of the possible, don't worry if you didn't qualify the first time around. Henry didn't qualify the first time around. And look, he won in Shell Livewire. You can get in touch with them here. It's shell.com.ph slash livewire. And, literally learn from both local and international mentors and have a chance to win 500,000 pesos equity free from Shell and have a chance to be part of the whole Shell value chain. And you get to meet, of course, all the different Livewire alumni. And who knows where the company could go, because your network is your net worth. And what a great network you get in Shell Livewire. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining me over here on the RJ Ledesma podcast. We'll see you guys in the next podcast. Again, thanks so much. Serge Bernal, Shell Philippines, Jerome Palaganas, Nanotronics, and Henry Sison, Agro Digital PH. We will see you in the next RJ Ledesma podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, RJ.
Thank
Thanks, everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.